Are they crazy? At the conclusion of this video, you tell me. These idiot globalists are destroying our way of life in front of our very eyes while they are digging their own graves. The most recent actions this weekend further support my claim. They seem to think that these significant actions they are doing would harm Putin and China, while in reality the opposite is true. This is going to damage both you and me. These individuals are naive because Putin just dealt Europe and the World Economic Forum a knockout punch, demonstrating that his method of supplying food and energy to his people is the best one. Look, this is another viewpoint. Although my viewpoint is not widely shared on Khan, the fact is that these unelected globalists are ruining everything for everyone. And this past weekend, they announced significant changes to their energy program, which I believe sealed their doom. And I think this is truly a knockout punch for Europe, like regressing to the Middle Ages. It resembles the metaphor of the boiling frog. You're aware of the metaphor, right? The frog doesn't realize the water is growing warmer and warmer until it is too late. In light of this, what Klaus Schwab and the European leaders are doing will endanger our way of life. We won't be aware of it until it's too late, though. We open our refrigerators and discover that we are both hungry and exhausted. But since I can clearly see what they're doing, we won't allow them to get away with it. They'll just brand folks like you and me as alarmists and make an effort to belittle and insult us. But we're keeping a tight eye on them. Likewise, you ought to. I'll now go into more specifics about what transpired this past weekend, because the numbers don't lie and you're going to be amazed by what I show you, in fact, just a few seconds ago. Actually, it's rather bizarre. And just now, these figures resemble a frog being dropped into a pot. The majority of individuals are not focused. They are enjoying some football. They don't seem to be paying much attention to anything. Thus, this past weekend saw the first significant movements in the Netherlands. It has gotten very awful. You can see how the globalist plan has progressed from being merely theoretical, printed out paper at the World Economic Forum, to actively claiming lives and dragging us back into the Middle Ages. So, here is the heading. Expect the Netherlands to shutter up to 3,000 farms to abide by EU regulations. This is hardly conspiracy-level material. I agree. They want you to switch from eating meat to their highly processed artificial food instead. It's taking place. However, the Dutch government has not paid attention to the farmers and is going to halt operations while it waits for this. They're planning to shut down 3,000 farms. The World Economic Forum is here. Klaus Schwab material amplified. Yes, he is entirely correct. These unelected goons compelled these tiny farmers to comply with nitrogen laws. They cannot submit to them, so now these farmers are likely to lose ownership of 3,000 farms. And this morning, tens of thousands of farmers gathered to the streets, blocked roadways, and demanded that these bullies leave our nitrogen-deficient crops alone. Fertilizer can't be produced. Therefore, you are unable to eat. Police tip tractors over with the use of large equipment. Consider this. While still housing farmers, the cops hauled demonstrators in the black vans when they stood pacifically in front of the machinery. In a Western democracy, forcing farmers into anonymous vehicles is frightening behavior. And in Germany, a nation that had already shut down its nuclear reactors decided to keep 3 of them operational for just a few more months after realizing that people couldn't heat their houses. Germany is set to stop allowing its farmers to fertilize their fields. You can see how popular it is becoming. The temperature of the boiling water is rising. Ralph Schallhammer, an academic scholar, has some thoughts about this. You're entirely correct, and I just spoke to him about it. It is ludicrous, to be sure. We observe current European leaders criticizing China's actions, at least occasionally, after all, with policy of Sirocco. However, we carry out the identical actions at a different location. Whether it's Dutch farmers or Canadian truckers, it almost seems like we borrow the Chinese's playbook and are startled when they do it, but have no trouble doing it ourselves. The final component of resistance is here. This last weekend, these globalists proposed capping the price of Putin's oil at year 60. Ursula thus makes this announcement with genuine pride, as if Putin will genuinely put up with it. It's like, hey, I'm selling bananas for $3 a lot at my store. You enter my shop and announce that you will only purchase them for 60 cents. Yeah, I wish you luck in that, so let's do this correctly. With the closure of nuclear power reactors, Europe's dependence on Russian oil and natural gas has decreased from 40 to 9. Are they crazy? Well, if you were looking for it, the answer is yes. Von der Leyen is thus withholding the fact that Europe pays 3 times as much for the processing and shipping of liquid natural gas from the United States. Obviously, this is also true for uranium and oil. They're going to put it on ships and send it across the ocean, instead of using a pipeline that comes directly from Russia, which will cost 3 times as much. Now, if Putin completely discontinues providing them uranium, he might deliver Europe the fatal blow. Currently, the US doesn't produce any uranium. Europe's zero is beginning to recognize the significance of nuclear power. Of course, if Putin cuts off their uranium supply, we'll be living in the Stone Age. Ralph responded to the question I had just posed regarding uranium by saying that Europe had screwed itself by placing so many limitations on it. Watch! A notable example of this is the uranium conundrum, which also applies to natural gas and oil. Europe ought to possess uranium. But naturally, environmental factors prevent us from mining it, right? Prohibitions and limits related to the environment. The second argument is that if it weren't so tragic, looking at Germany right now would be comical. Germany now produces some of the worst power in the world as we speak. In South Africa, it is done in a dirtier manner than in India. Because there is now little wind and little sun, the United States ranks 170 out of 177 countries in terms of CO2 emissions per kilowatt-hour generated. So from whence do they receive their electricity? They obtain it by the combustion of gas, which is obviously far more CO2 intensive than coal. They continue to argue that we came dangerously near to going nuclear. For the past 30 days, the gigawatt of installed nuclear power has made no impact since. In the absence of sunlight or wind, no amount of photovoltaic and solar farms or wind turbines would compel them to move or otherwise act in any way. Therefore, it is the exact same situation as with the Dutch farmers, except in a different location. Do you believe it to be a type of cognitive dissonance, yet you continue with the policy? For example, in order to stick it to Putin, they are requesting that you lower your thermostat at night and wear an additional sweater. Instead, Putin is boosting uranium production and exports to China and the Middle East, while the United States and Europe remain silent. The US does not produce any uranium. Zero. So I'll return to my frog analogy. See, this is what's going on. They closed the farms, so there is no agriculture here. Without these farms, there will be greater food shortages. At first, you won't notice it, but by the following winter, everyone will be asking, hey, why don't we have any food? I've just finished reading Fossil Future by Alex Epstein, which I heartily recommend. He claims that the decisions being made by these worldwide organizations would usher in a dark era in contemporary history because of the widespread belief that farms are harmful to the environment and should be eliminated in favor of forests. Then you may venture outside to hunt berries and scavenge for nourishment. But he makes the point throughout the book that our environment is harsh by nature, just as the planet itself is. Subscribe to this channel to watch all the secret news. One of the first